Greetings, students. Time for another video lecture. Today we're going to be talking about the importance of evaluation. So at this point in your groups course, you had quite a bit of information given to you about the structure, the purpose, different dynamics, things to expect as it relates to you actually starting to run your group series. But equally as important on the other end is the whole concept of evaluation. As you remember, one of our competencies in social work is about evidence-based practice. So bear with me as we take a few minutes just to kind of walk through the slides here. There are only a handful to talk about the importance of evaluation and some things that you can do to actually make the evaluation a very good process. Let me turn my music down a little bit so y'all can hear my voice. All right, so without any further ado, why do we want to evaluate in the first place? So there are some benefits to evaluation, and there are things around encouragement and time consideration and evaluation methods that we need to take a look at. So some of the benefits for the evaluation process is that evaluations can satisfy the worker's curiosity and professional concerns about the effects of the specific interventions to perform while they're doing the group. So in other words, I need to be making sure that the things that we do in the context of our groups make sense, are not detrimental to the well-being of our client. And so sometimes the only way to do that is to actually have the experience, but then to evaluate to see what that was like in terms of that as well. Also, evaluations allow group members and others to be affected and express their satisfactions or dissatisfaction with the group. So oftentimes you'll utilize satisfaction surveys just to kind of get a sense of what worked for people in terms of your group. So there are some benefits to actually looking at this whole process of evaluation, because it informs us as practitioners about whether this is a methodology or a technique that we will continue to use to try to address this particular problem. So it's all about client interest. Some other things to keep in mind as well is that organizational support and encouragement. Oftentimes you hear that workers are very busy with high caseloads doing a number of different things, but the evaluation needs to be at the backbone, because if there are things that we are doing and we don't know whether they're working or not, then it's really not an ethical justification to continue to use these processes. So the evaluation steps in, and I think agencies are starting to embrace that and to encourage it. So if you've got a well-designed information and evaluation system that can provide feedback for group practitioners as well as agency administrators, if they can see the cost-benefit ratio and analysis and the outcomes that are positive for clients, then those are things that will continue to drive that process further. So just to keep that in mind. Also briefly recognize that it's going to take some time. So there's some time consideration. So if you're building your model as you're doing your group proposal process, also think about building in a significant amount of time to actually look at how we're going to do the evaluation. And then there are a number of different evaluation methods you can utilize. Grabbing the data that can help us understand how we plan for the groups, how we monitor them, how we develop them, how we attest the effectiveness of, are also things that we need to keep in mind as well as we're looking at these methods. So some things we can do, say for example, if we're looking at task groups and whether they actually work, we can read the meeting from previous groups. We can look at any operating procedures that existed in previous task groups, whether these were successful, as well as examine the records for previous groups that focused on similar types of concerns. So again, those are all some methods that we can think about, but also keeping in mind that time is going to be a very important factor in this process as well. Program information and needs assessment. Again, we need to think about the different methods that we're going to utilize when we are actually doing this. So again, getting that information about what's happening that's driving the need for this type of an intervention within your agency. So if I've got multiple clients that are coming in with similar types of concerns, would it be more cost effective, for example, to think about a group series as opposed to some individualized work, which could be more expensive when we think about that. So thinking about evaluation for planning for you. You need to really kind of think about those things um, as we move forward. So keep that in mind. Monitoring methods. So how are we going to pay attention to this information that we have gathered? So there are a number of different ways that we can gather information. You can have monitoring by group members. There are all kinds of self-report pieces, self-monitoring checklists, um, rating scales that you can utilize. So as people experience the groups, they can talk to you about the impact that it has had in terms of the work that they're doing now, or whether things have improved in their functioning, as well as monitoring those particular methods. So again, process recording is another way that we can actually think about how we gather that information too in a co-facilitated model. So something to keep in mind. Developmental evaluations. When we think about developmental evaluations, we're thinking about identifying problem need. We're also thinking about analyzing the relevant data, what's going on now, what information do we have. We're also evaluating new programs and different methods, as well as developing a new group program or method and modifying the program based on the data that existed before. So these are things to think about when you're looking at developing, or should I say evaluation, or developing evaluation for a group. As well as we can also look at methodology, single system designs, and it's basically, y'all know from research what a single system method is. It's a single subject design that collects data over a period of time to look at whether there's been a change in functioning based on the new methodology that has been shared. As well as we've got the various different types of evaluations and types of evaluation measures that we need to also be concerned with as well too. So making sure that we understand the evaluation measures, the objectives of the evaluation, the properties of the measurements being used, the forms on which we're going to collect the data, and what constructs the, how we're going to measure that data that we actually gather as well too. So again, we talk about different types of measures. Self-report measures are fairly popular. Observational methods, a little bit more time consuming, but allows you to actually look at whether things have changed from an observational standpoint. So these are just some of the things that we need to think about when we are looking at the process of evaluation. So as you move forward to evaluate your groups, make sure that you think about, within the context of the agencies that you may be working for, if this becomes something you do in your career, to make sure that there's time to build in to evaluate. Because again, we don't want to be involved in a process that doesn't necessarily yield positive results for our clients. So as always, I encourage you to do your readings prior to attending class and come prepared to have some decent discussion about evaluation. Thank you. Take care.